Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We are at GearFest 2013. We have a very special guest. Bunny Carlos is here.
Hey Mitch, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for
I'm
having
so
me.
excited you drove over from Illinois to
Yep.
actually play with Fountains of Wayne this afternoon, right?
Yeah, it'll be something different.
Yeah, right. Now you've played with the bass player before.
Yeah, I played with Adam in a little side band called Tinted Windows.
Right, but you've never worked with the whole band.
No, I never worked with Jody or Chris.
Right.
Something new.
Right. Well, that'll be fun. We're looking forward to seeing it. You're going to be doing a concert in the theater here.
Yeah, nice venue too.
It is a fun place to play. Yeah, it's going to be great. So we had actually Jack Douglas was in here yesterday, doing a seminar on recording, and we were actually chatting about you and the guys.
Jack, he's the man.
Yeah, he found you guys in Waukesha, Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah, well, we picked him up at the airport and stuff.
Is that right?
His memory has changed over the years.
Yeah.
So has all of our memories. So there you go.
So
yeah.
what's the real story?
The real story is we wanted to sign with CBS, and we wanted Jack to produce us.
Mm-hmm.
And we called Jack, and he came out and saw us. We flew him out from New York because he had a sister-in-law that lived in Waukesha, Wisconsin, or sister.
Mm-hmm.
And we came and picked him up, and he saw the gig and taped the gig and had a stopwatch and a notebook and all that, making sure the drums didn't speed up and stuff. And
Right.
he went back to New York and told CBS, he was going to produce us, and these guys were real good, and that helped us get our deal with CBS, a 12-album record deal,
Mm-hmm.
and it helped to get the booking deal too. And that's how it started with Jack.
Right. The rest is history, right?
Well, we did the first album with him. We did Budokan with him. We did Standing on the Edge with Tonight It's You. 30 years after Budokan, we did remixes of Budokan with him. We still work with Jack. We did an album with him about 6-7 years ago.
Right. Yeah, he's doing great music. It's good stuff, and what a great guy. We had fun talking with him.
He's got the touch, and our first album, we wanted John Lennon to produce it, and he'd retired. And there was Jack Douglas. He'd worked with John Lennon and The Who and all sorts of cool people, and he just had the magic touch.
Right. Now you've been branching out lately. You're into coffee and things, right?
A guy with a coffee shop up in Minnesota said, let's do a brand of Bunny coffee. And so we call it Bunny Blend, and there's a video on it and all sorts of goofy stuff. If you Google Bunny Blend, you'll find some propaganda on it or something, but
Right.
it's coffee,
Right. Oh, that's great. That's a lot of fun. So what do you have happening musically? What's going on with you?
Well, musically, I'm retired from the road with Cheap Trick. It got kind of crazy out there, but I'm still a member of the group and organization. I played on the last Christmas single last fall and stuff like that. I'm messing around in some side projects. I have a Monday night band where I live. We only play on Mondays, and so we sewed up that corner of the market. And it's guys in other bands, and so they're always off on Mondays.
Right.
And I do like the Fountains of Wayne. I sub for these guys. There's another band from Monroe called the Jimmies, who the drummer is the former drummer for the Georgia Satellites, Mauro Magellan. I sub for him in that band when he's like in Europe with Dan Baird or people like that, other satellites. And just a little bit of this and that, mess around. I started a Facebook page archiving all the Cheap Trick stuff. I have the Cheap Trick archives and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of great material there.
Yeah, about 4,000 shows on tape and disc.
Wow.
and a lot of print.
So 4,000 shows on tape and disc. Are we going to see that coming out in some release format?
Yeah, we put a few CDs out for our fan service in the late 90s, and when we signed with a new label, we retired that temporarily, and it'll get picked up again. And we have a lot of cool guests sitting in with us over the last 40 years. So, the next one may be something like that, special guests.
That'd be great.
Oh, it'd be fun.
That'd be fun, yeah. So I saw you play a number of times, and I always wanted to ask you, the giant drumsticks.
The big sticks.
Yeah. How much practicing did you have to have the techniques to do the big
sticks? Big sticks are about 3 feet long. You got to hold them in the middle, or you really can't play them. You got to kind of have power of balance.
Right.
But when we started in the 70s, the big thing was prog rock and glam rock, and these guys with capes and dinosaur bones hanging on stage in fog, and we were kind of a reaction against that. And so it was like, you got to do a drum solo. So I was like, I'll think of a drum solo that no one will ever forget. So I got these 3-foot drumsticks and just sit up, and it would wreck. The cymbal stands would snap and the cymbals would crack, and these huge craters in the drum head. So it was good business for all our suppliers and stuff, because it was pre-endorsement days. I didn't have any endorsements, and I was using a cymbal a week and a couple stands every week. And it made for a cool solo, though, a really nice-looking drum solo.
Expensive, but cool, right?
Well, you had to have something in the show.
Yeah, right. So how did you get started playing drums? What got you going?
The Beatles on Ed Sullivan, in 1964. I was 12 years old, and they came on, and it was like, Ma, I got to get a set of drums. And so my brother too, my little brother. And then 10 years later, of course, I find out, my grandma tells me, oh, you're a third generation drummer in the family. And I was like, well, thanks for letting me know. And I was like, well, we didn't want to encourage you to be a musician, and stuff like, that was not a great profession to be in back 50 years ago.
Sure.
They remember Gene Krupa, they didn't want that to happen, and stuff.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, it kind of started like that, and I got my drum set and I set them up just like they were in the catalog, like all around me. It didn't make any sense at all, and just started to go see drummers and learn how to play.
Did you have formal training, or are you self-taught?
No, I was left-handed, and I ended up on a right-handed set, and I didn't really know what to do. And after a couple of years, I thought maybe I should take some lessons to see what all the fuss was about. And I didn't have a great teacher. It was a small music store, and it was a kid my age, and he didn't know what to do. He started crossing out all the L's and writing in R's, and I was just like, eh. And I took one lesson and went back home.
Right.
Didn't do that again.
Right.
But I wouldn't recommend that for a music student. When I play French horn, I had to learn to read music and do, march and do all that kind of stuff. And I taught myself to play piano and learn to read music. So drums, I just never got around to it.
Right. But you had that background then. You understood rhythms, you understood the harmonic motion and all those kind of things.
Yeah, my high school harmony courses and starting band classes were real good for all of that, so I could do intervals and progressions and stuff.
Right, right. But as a drummer, one of the things that it's hard to teach is the feel, and really getting that solidity and where you're placing the backbeat, where the kick drum's hitting. How do you learn that, or how does somebody work on perfecting that?
Well, imitation is a good way, and my folks had a jukebox in the basement they got from somebody, so we'd buy singles, me and my brother, and we'd put them in the jukebox, get behind it with a screwdriver and turn that 18-inch speaker all the way up and drum along with records. And I did that for probably 2 years before I got in a band. And then when I got in a band, we practiced twice a week, and other nights I'd go in the basement and play, and the poor family upstairs, they had to just be killing them.
Right.
It had to be brutal.
Right.
But that's basically how I learned. And I went to concerts all the time. I'd bring a notebook and a camera and stuff like that. I met Jeff Beck when I was like 14 and snuck in and interviewed Pete Townsend when I was 16 and helped get Keith Moon's drums out of the cases and stuff like that. I talked to the Cream Roadies when they played Beloit and in Chicago, and I'd schmooze with a crew and stuff like, I was that little kid that wouldn't leave people alone.
Right.
And stuff like that. And I'd write all the songs down and write the gear down and take pictures. Hopefully the ushers wouldn't throw you out back in those days. And I'd do stuff like that. I'd, take the bus into Chicago when I was like 15 and go to shows.
Right. So it sounds like you were really obsessed with learning about all of it.
Well, the people that I knew that I'd see at the shows were guys like Rick Nielsen and stuff like that. He was 2 years older than me. My sister knew him, but I'd see him at the Stones and at Hendrix and gigs like that. And these are the guys, that's how you become a professional. You kind of start living it,
Right.
and then just soaking it all up.
Right. What a great time to come up with the opportunity to see all those great bands.
Oh yeah, it was really cool. The Beatles were $5.50 for a ticket, I remember. I was in the front row and they were out on second base. They were just little guys, but I could kind of hear them most of the time, and
wow.
Just goofy things like that.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. So, at a concert like that, in those days the sound systems weren't that great. Could you really, what was that like compared to a concert now?
The Beatles had about 6 or 7 speaker stacks like this, about this wide, in front of a 15-foot stage. And I remember Ticket to Ride, because I talk about this in a clinic occasionally. Ticket to Ride, in the bridge, Ringo goes with a hi-hat from this pattern, and Lennon or somebody waved. And the whole 30,000 kids, mostly girls, all screamed. And suddenly the only thing I could hear was the hi-hat. And it was like one of my first lessons. It was like, okay, that's the loudest thing in the band that cuts through the noise and stuff. It's like, I better lay off that thing, because I was kids, we just wailed on that stuff. And, you pick up these things incrementally like that. When first couple times I saw the Stones, the drums weren't mic'd and things like that. And the first time they had small Fender amps, and Bill Wyman had a little Vox, and it was nice and balanced, just 2 vocal mics. The next summer was when Brian and Keith had these dual Showmans, and they were going for this wall of sound. And suddenly, where did Charlie go? You couldn't hear Charlie, stuff like that. And so you start these little things that start to dawn on you, and you just kind of soak them in. And
right.
Our first band, we bought our own PA and built our own PA and things like that. So we learned, what you had to have and what it cost, and how not to build it a lot of times. The bass player built his first amp. He had some 6-foot tall thing, worked for about 5 minutes, and then he went to the local music store and got something that worked.
Right.
But, it was that kind of stuff back in the DIY days, the high school days.
Right, right. So then when you moved up to arena shows and things, was that still your same approach to it? You were still trying to balance it on stage and keep it that way, or how did that change?
Well, we kind of had to learn the hard way. Our sound man that did the first couple years in the bars and clubs with us, he got out. We did a couple dates opening for Queen before we had a record out, and we'd open for Fleetwood Mac right before they got huge. And he didn't know how to handle these big boards, so we had to try a couple different sound men. And yeah, we finally got an Englishman, and he said, "You guys get it the way you like it, and I'll turn it up." And we were like, "Oh, that's good. We like that." It was pretty nice and simple.
Right.
And that's the way that went. Till then, at some point, it was like, you got to cut holes in the bottom of your drum head so I can put mics in and all that. And then we learned some more, to find another sound man and stuff. So it's still a learning experience. Nothing's the same now as it was back then.
Sure.
In the old days, the best guy in the studio was the engineer with a razor blade who knew how to edit. And that's a lost art.
Yeah.
For good reason.
Yeah. Well, now it's easy with digital, right?
It's a pleasure to record now.
Yeah.
No sitting around anymore.
Right. Right. And when you're recording now, how do you approach the sound that you want to get from your drums? Do you go for a real acoustic type sound, or are you looking for something that's a little bit more processed, or as a drummer, what do you look for?
It depends on the song. Depends who you're working for or what you're going for. Of course, in the '80s, nobody wanted to hear a natural drum sound, and noise gates, and effects, and everything kind of came in and went way over the top, and then it swung back. In the '90s, Nirvana kind of brought things back to on the ground a little bit. Bands like that, and nowadays it all depends on the song. I mean, if it's something like, say, 4/4, or what we'd call like more electronic oriented or something, yeah, let's throw some stuff on here and see what we get, and that kind of stuff. Let's throw a wallet on the snare drum and flatten that out so we can sample and slice and dice and stuff, and if it's Americana, let's get the brushes out and get the mutes off the drums and put the headphone only on one ear and just kind of play along with the bass player in the room. I mean, there's so many different styles of music these days. It's really a challenge for drummers. When I grew up, there was rock and there was not rock.
Right. So with the tremendous catalog that you created through the years, do you hear the influence of your band and modern bands? Is it something where you listen on the radio and you go, you know what, that was me, or that was Cheap Trick, or
once in a blue moon, like when Poison came out with their first album, it was like, hey, that's Come On, and that's She's Tight, because they stole the stuff. I mean, and they came up and told us that later. So I mean,
right.
I wasn't just dreaming of this stuff, but most of the time I'd read these reviews, like living in Rockford. The Chicago Tribune, like the Smashing Pumpkins, you can hear the Cheap Trick influence on this, and I go buy the record, and I'm just like, I can't hear this stuff, So
right.
I don't hear myself in some other band unless the guy's just stealing my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One night Jason Sutter was with Billy Idol, and we were doing a festival with him somewhere, and me and my roadie went up to watch, and they started some song where he starts on drums, and he's up there doing this thing, and after about a minute, I turn to my roadie and I go, I think he's doing Ain't That a Shame? And he's like, yeah, he's doing the whole intro. And after the gig, Jason was like, yeah, how'd you like that? Da, 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 da. But it took me about a minute to figure it out. Because I was like, I know that lick, and I used to do that lick. And
right.
Hey, wait a minute, those are my licks, and stuff like that. So, yeah, once in a while.
Right. That's awesome. I'm so glad you came in. It's been wonderful to have a chance to talk to you here, and we are really excited to hear you playing with Fountains of Wayne this afternoon. Thanks for coming to GearFest.
Thanks for having me, Mitch, and
you bet.
We're going to have some fun today.
I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
Great. Thanks again. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.